Ever wonder how a single moment can flip your whole world upside down? Picture this: my hands shaking, stained with blood that wasn't mine, and the realization hitting me like a freight train. Life is raw, real, and hits you hard. Before I dive into this story I've kept locked away for decades, do me a favour, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment telling me what city you're tuning in from. Every comment feels like a warm hug to this old gal's heart. I'm Mary Johnson, but folks around here in Maplewood, this cosy little corner of Vermont where the winters make you question if you're still in America, just call me Grandma Mary from the town square. I'm 78 now, my fingers aren't what they used to be, and my hair's gone full-on silver. I don't even bother with dye anymore. I run a little craft shop that's less about selling quilts and more about giving the town's grandmas a place to gossip over coffee. I was born in 1947 in a rickety wooden cabin with a tin roof out in the sticks of Vermont. We were so far from civilization, the only car we ever saw was the priest's, rolling up once a month for mass under a giant oak tree that doubled as our church. That cabin, dirt floors, no electricity, no running water, but as a kid it still felt like home. 6 of us were crammed in there. My dad, Joe Johnson, folks called him Joe the Lumberjack for his wild, unkempt hair. My mum, Sarah, or Stern Sarah, because farm life carved a hardness into her. My 3 older brothers, Tony, Jack and Pete, and me, the youngest, the only girl. The one who, according to my dad's moonshine-fueled rants, shouldn't have even been born. Dad was old school, a man of his time. To him, women had 3 jobs: work, have kids, and listen to their husbands. Mum lived that truth without complaint, dragging herself up before dawn to make coffee, slaving in the fields with us, then coming home to cook, wash clothes in the creek, and still deal with Dad's demands, even when she was dead on her feet. A good woman doesn't whine, doesn't cry, and doesn't say no, she'd tell me, showing me how to grind corn for dinner when I was just 8. I thought that was just how life worked. How was I supposed to know any different? My brothers, raised in Dad's shadow, soaked up his beliefs like sponges. Women were less than men, the world was theirs for the taking, and at home Dad's word was gospel. Tony, the oldest, was Dad's spitting image. Tall, strong, hands rough as sandpaper, with a temper to match. He looked at women like they were his to control. My childhood was a blur of fieldwork, chores Mom drilled into me from the moment I could reach the stove, and stolen moments under an old maple tree, devouring tattered books from the schoolteacher. I made it to 3rd grade before Dad yanked me out. "Why bother with school? You'll just get married and have kids," he said, case closed. I cried for days, hiding in the barn, but tears didn't change a thing. In our house, Joe's word was law, and nobody, not even Mom, dared challenge him. Things shifted when I hit 14. My body started changing, curves showing up despite the scraps we ate. When I'd go to the town market to sell our vegetables, I'd catch men staring, looks that made my skin crawl, like they were peeling away my clothes without a touch. But none scared me more than the way Tony, my own brother, started watching me. He was 22, working construction in town, only coming home on weekends. One Saturday I caught his eyes on me when he thought no one was looking. It wasn't a brother's gaze. It made my blood run cold, my heart pounding like a trapped animal. I whispered to Mum about it while we scrubbed clothes in the creek, far from the men. "Nonsense, Mary," she said, not even looking up from the washboard. "He's your brother, your own flesh and blood. You're imagining things." But I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. From then on I did everything to avoid being alone with Tony, sticking close to Mum, dodging him when he stumbled in drunk on moonshine. Things at home got worse. The drought of '62 torched our crops, money dried up, and Dad's temper, already bad, turned vicious. Mum's occasional beatings became a daily ritual. Cold supper, a wrinkled shirt, or just because he needed to lash out. Hey friends, I need a quick sip of water here. If you're still with me through this heavy story, drop a like and let me know where you're watching from. Your comments light up this old heart like fireflies on a summer night. Around this time, my grandma, Josephine, who lived alone in a little house in town, started getting sick. Mum, her only kid, was the only one who could care for her. After a lot of arguing, Dad let Mum spend a few days a week in town, but only if I took over all her chores. "Mess up, and you'll learn the hard way," he growled. The morning Mum left, her eyes full of worry as she clutched a bundle of clothes and headed out. Those first weeks were brutal. I was up before dawn, making breakfast, cooking lunch and dinner, washing, ironing, cleaning, all under Dad's critical glare and Tony's unsettling stares. Jack and Pete had already left home, one at a lumber mill in Maine, the other chasing dreams in Chicago. It was just me, Dad and Tony in that suffocating house. Then came that Thursday, the day Mum went to town. I was in the makeshift bathroom out back, washing with creek water I'd hauled, when the door creaked open. Before I could scream, Tony's rough hand clamped over my mouth. "Don't even think about it, kid," he hissed, his breath reeking of moonshine. "I've been waiting for this." I fought, I swear I did, but he was too strong. I won't drag you through what happened in that bathroom. Some things I've spent a lifetime trying to bury. When it was over, he left me curled up on the floor, shaking, with a chilling threat. "Tell anyone and I'll kill you and Mum." Tears mixed with the bathwater as I scrubbed my skin raw, feeling like I'd never be clean again. Who would believe me over Tony, Dad's golden boy? And even if they did, what then? Back then, in that place, girls were often blamed for tempting men. I didn't sleep that night, clutching a piece of wood under my pillow, jumping at every sound. Come morning, while Dad and Tony were in the fields, I ran to the creek and scrubbed again until my skin burned. I decided I'd tell Mum everything when she came back Sunday. I couldn't keep this inside, couldn't stay in that house with him, but life had other plans. Saturday night, as I stirred a pot of beans for dinner, Dad stormed in with news. Grandma Josephine was fading fast, and Mum wouldn't be back Sunday. She'd stay in town until the end, maybe a whole week. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Another week alone with those men. I cried into the beans, tears disappearing into the broth. That night, after Dad and Tony passed out drunk, snoring in their hammocks, something in me shifted. I couldn't keep living like this. I wouldn't survive another week under that roof, not like this. I had to protect myself. No one else would. Sunday was their bath day, when they'd washed together to save water, using buckets I filled from the creek. It was when they'd be vulnerable, no knives, no clothes, no way to chase me if I pulled off what I was planning. Dad kept a sharp machete for chopping wood. I knew where it was. I knew how to use it. I'd swung heavy tools in the field since I was a kid. My arms were stronger than they looked. That night, as I lay awake, heart pounding so hard I thought it had burst, a cold resolve settled in. I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. It was them or me, and it sure as hell wasn't going to be me. All Sunday I played the part, acting normal, keeping my head down, but inside I was ready. Every move I made that Sunday felt like walking a tightrope. I brewed coffee, served it without meeting their eyes, cooked lunch, scrubbed dishes, all while my heart pounded like a drum. Every tick of the clock brought me closer to what I had to do, fear twisting with a steely resolve I didn't know I had. As the sun dipped low, I hauled buckets of creek water for their bath, just like always. But this time there was a twist. Dad's razor-sharp machete, usually propped in the kitchen corner, was hidden under a bucket in the bathroom. What went down in that bathroom changed me forever. I'm not proud of it, but I don't regret it either. I did what I had to do to survive. When it was over, that house had 2 fewer souls, and my hands, still a girl's hands, carried a stain that'd never wash out. I scrubbed the machete clean in the creek, scoured the bathroom floor, and dragged their bodies to a pit Dad had started digging for a cistern. I buried it all, dirt, stones, dry branches, under the moon's silent watch. Before dawn, I was gone, a small bundle of clothes and a few bucks I'd found stashed in an old coffee can tucked under my arm. I walked all night to town, where Mum was keeping vigil over Grandma Josephine's body. Every step I rehearsed my story. How do you explain two men vanishing from a house? I settled on something simple. I'd overheard Dad and Tony talking about chasing gold in California. Then they got into a nasty fight and took off, each going their own way. Back then, men ditching their families for a shot at riches wasn't unheard of. Most never struck it rich anyway. When I got to Grandma's house, Mum was sitting by her body, eyes red and swollen from crying. She saw me, opened her arms, too drained to ask why I was there. "They're gone, Mum," I said when she finally asked about Dad and Tony. "They fought and left." She nodded, too broken to dig deeper. Maybe, deep down, she felt a flicker of relief. Who could blame her? Grandma's funeral was the next day. A plain coffin, a wooden cross, a handful of folks to say goodbye. Standing by that grave, I looked at Mum, a woman life had worn to the bone. We couldn't go back to that cursed house with its buried secrets. "Now what, Mum?" I asked, gripping her calloused hand. "Where do we go?" She looked at Grandma's little clapboard house. "We stay here," she said. "This is ours now. We start fresh." And so we did. We settled into town life, Mum washing clothes for richer folks, me cleaning houses. We slept on a mattress on the living room floor, ate what our meagre earnings could buy. It wasn't much, but it was a roof, a new start, far from those ghosts. But let me tell you, ghosts have a way of following you, no matter how far you run. At night, when I closed my eyes, that bathroom scene played on repeat. The machete, the blood, their eyes as life slipped away. I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, the metallic tang of blood still in my nose. Mum thought I was crying for Dad and Tony. "They'll come back, honey," she'd say, trying to comfort me. "When they strike it rich in California, they'll come for us." How could I tell her the truth? How could I shatter the little hope she clung to? So I swallowed my tears, nodded, and carried my secret like a stone in my chest. Then the cough started. At first I brushed it off as a cold, but it wouldn't quit. Nighttime fevers left me shivering, exhaustion weighing me down like a wet blanket. Mum, already gutted by Grandma's death, was eaten up with worry. "Just a cold," I'd say, trying to keep her calm. "I'll be fine tomorrow." But I wasn't. The cough got worse, my sheets soaked from night sweats, my ribs poking through my skin as I dropped weight. A town doctor, called by one of Mum's employers who noticed how bad I looked, gave the verdict: tuberculosis, likely caught while I was with Grandma in her final days. Hey friends, ever get news that feels like the world's caving in? A diagnosis that hits like a death sentence? Drop a comment if you've faced something like that or know someone who has. It helps to know we're not alone. Back then, TB was a big deal, especially for a poor country girl with no money for fancy treatments. The doctor told Mom, "She needs a sanatorium. There's no proper care here. Maybe in New York." New York? To us it was another planet. Skyscrapers, crowds, a world that didn't care about two broke women from nowhere. But it was my only shot. "I'm not letting her go alone," Mum said, her voice firm in a way I hadn't heard in years. "If she goes, I go." 6 months after I left that farm, with blood on my hands and a secret in my heart, we were on a grueling bus ride to New York. The cough tore at my chest. Fevers had me delirious, but Mum held my hand like she could keep me alive with sheer will. We had almost no money, just a scrap of paper with the address of a distant cousin, Mike, who'd made it big in the city, or so we'd heard. He was our only lifeline. We rolled into New York's bus station at night, the city's cold, damp air a shock after Vermont's dry heat. Mum, who'd never left rural Vermont, looked terrified by the towering buildings and rushing crowds. Thank God Mike showed up, a middle-aged guy with a faded New England accent, softened by years in the city. He took us to a cramped room in his house on the outskirts and helped get me into St. Elizabeth's sanatorium the next day, even fronting Mum some cash to rent a room nearby. That sanatorium was my home for 9 months, a grim place with grey walls, the sharp smell of disinfectant, and a constant chorus of coughs and groans. Lying in a narrow bed, staring at a cracked ceiling, I replayed that bathroom scene over and over, not just with guilt or fear, but with a weird distance, like it happened to someone else. Mum visited every Sunday, never missing a half-hour slot, bringing an apple or a cookie she'd scraped together money for. She'd hold my bony hand, telling me about the city, sights she saw, people she met, trying to keep my spirits up. "How's Dad? How's Tony?" she'd ask, her eyes searching mine like she could pull the truth out. "No word yet, Mom," I'd say, looking away, fussing with my blanket. "California's far. Letters take time." It was a lie I had to tell, to protect her, to keep her hope alive in those brutal days. Sometimes I'd spin stories, how they'd struck gold, were saving up to come get us. I got so good at lying, I almost believed it myself. 3 months in, Mum started coughing. The same fever, the same bone-deep tiredness. Taking care of me, sleeping in the same room when I was contagious had gotten her sick too. She tried to hide it, coughing to the side, wiping sweat from her brow, saying she was just hot, blaming her thinness on skipping meals to buy me treats. But I knew. I knew those signs all too well. I'd felt them in my own body. "Mum, you've got to see a doctor," I pleaded during one of her Sunday visits, watching her struggle to sit up, her face pale and drawn. "Please, you're not okay." "It's just a cold, honey," she said, echoing the same lie I'd told months ago. "It'll pass." But it didn't. The next week she didn't show up, or the week after. When I finally got word, it came from Mike, our cousin. Mum had been admitted to another ward in St. Elizabeth's Sanatorium. For weeks I begged to see her. The nurses shut me down. Too weak to walk, they said. Rules are rules. But one night, a kind nurse named Clara, who must have seen the desperation in my eyes, broke protocol. She snuck me through the chilly corridors to Mum's bedside. What I saw shattered me. Mum, who'd always been a rock despite everything, was a ghost of herself. Bones wrapped in thin skin, hair gone fully grey, eyes sunken and fever bright. "Mary," she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for my face. "I'm sorry I couldn't take care of you better." I grabbed her fragile hand, the one that had worked so hard, endured so much. "There's nothing to forgive, Mum. You did everything for me. Rest now." We sat in silence, just holding on until her next words stopped my heart. "I know what happened in that bathroom, Mary. I know." My breath caught. Did she really know? Had she pieced it together, or was it just fever talking? "What do you mean, Mum?" I asked, voice shaking. "The bathroom, the machete, the blood," she murmured, her eyes fixed somewhere past me, like she saw ghosts I couldn't. "I saw it in a dream. I saw you." Tears poured down my face as I clung to her hand, unable to lie, unable to confess. Somehow, in that mysterious way mothers know their kids, she'd seen the truth. "They deserved it," she whispered, her voice barely there. "I knew what Tony did to you. I always knew he'd turn out like his father." I hugged her tight, sobbing openly, not caring about the sleeping patients around us. It was like a boulder lifted off my chest. She knew, and she didn't judge me. She understood. "I'm sorry, Mum," I choked out. "Sorry I lied. Sorry I didn't tell you." "Nothing to forgive," she said, her voice fading. "You did what I never could. You saved yourself. Now live, Mary. Live for both of us." Those were her last words. The next morning, I got the news. Mum passed in the early hours, alone. Her funeral was simple. Me, with special permission to leave the sanatorium for a few hours, Mike, and a gravedigger. A cheap coffin, a shallow grave in a cemetery on the city's edge. Some wildflowers Mike picked along the way. No money for more, no family to share the grief. Back at the sanatorium, I was 17 and utterly alone. No parents, no brothers, no home, just a heavy secret and TB that was slowly losing its grip thanks to the meds. But Mum's final words gave me something, an absolution, a purpose. She didn't condemn me. She wanted me to live, to find the life she never had. In my darkest moments, when fever blurred my mind and chest pain felt like knives, I clung to her words. Live for both of us. And I did, my friends, I did. 9 months after I entered, I walked out of St. Elizabeth's, my clothes hanging off me like they belonged to someone else. In the mirror, I saw a girl aged beyond her years, hollow eyes, skin stretched tight over bones. But I was alive. I'd survived, and I carried Mum's last wish like a vow. Mike, our lifeline in New York, helped me start over. "You can't go back to that farm, Mary," he said. "TB could come back if you're not careful. Stay here, build a new life." He was right, not just for my health, but because Vermont held nothing but ghosts and 2 bodies buried in a forgotten yard. I got a job as a maid for Mrs. Eleanor, an older Italian widow in Brooklyn whose kids had moved back to Italy. She was strict but fair, didn't care about my thick Vermont accent or my inexperience with city homes. "You've got too much sadness in those eyes for someone so young," she said on my first day. "Work hard here and you'll get respect." And I did, Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m, with an hour for lunch. The pay was small, but it came with food and a room. It was a start, a clean slate. Slowly I learned to live with my secret. Nightmares still came, but they faded over time. My hand stopped shaking at the sight of a knife. Guilt? It never fully left. Not for what I did, I never regretted that, but for the cost. If I hadn't done it, if we'd stayed in that miserable life, maybe Mum wouldn't have gotten sick. Maybe she'd still be here. Those what-ifs haunted me in the quiet of my tiny maid's room. Anyone out there know what it's like to carry a what-if like a backpack you can't put down? Drop a comment with your story and where you're watching from. Knowing I'm not alone warms this old heart. Then came a Sunday that changed everything. It was my day off, and I was in Central Park, sitting on a bench, watching families laugh, couples stroll, a world that felt so far from mine. Nearby, a group of guys were tossing a ball around. It rolled to my feet, and when I stood to toss it back, my eyes met his. He smiled. A simple, kind smile, no strings attached. Something about it stirred me in a way I didn't expect. "Thanks," he said, grabbing the ball, lingering like he wanted to say more, but his friends called him back. The next Sunday, I was back on that same bench, telling myself it was just a nice spot, but deep down I hoped he'd show. And he did, alone this time, walking slow like he had all the time in the world. "You were here last week," he said, stopping by my bench, not asking, just stating. "So were you," I shot back, feeling my cheeks heat up. "I'm Charlie," he said, offering his hand. "Mary Dolan," I replied, shaking it quick, not used to that kind of touch. But everyone just calls me Mary. We started talking, shy at first, then meeting every Sunday like it was written in stone. Charlie was a city kid, born to rural migrants like me, working as a delivery boy for a pharmacy, dreaming of owning his own shop someday. He had kind eyes, strong hands that never reached for me without respect. Week by week I opened up, told him about growing up in Vermont, Mom's death, my brothers off chasing their dreams. But I never mentioned the bathroom, the machete, the bodies. Not because I didn't trust Charlie. He was different, gentle in a way I'd never known. But some things are too heavy to share, even with someone you're starting to love. Because I was falling for him. His quiet way of talking, how he actually listened, his simple dreams. They felt like a safe harbour after years of storms. It was a love I'd never known, free of fear, free of violence, free of feeling like prey. Every touch, every moment Charlie got close, I braced myself, waiting for the pain that always used to follow. But with him it never came, just kindness, respect, and a warmth I slowly learned to trust. Our first kiss came 6 months after we met, on a bench in Union Square, pigeons squabbling over crumbs nearby. Charlie looked at me, his eyes asking permission before he leaned in. It was quick, shy, but it set my heart racing like nothing ever had. When we pulled back, he saw my hand shaking. "Did I mess up?" he asked, worry creasing his face. "No," I said, catching my breath. It's never been like this, gentle, like I matter." He took my hands, steady but soft. "You matter, Mary, more than you know." Right there, something inside me cracked open. An old wound, healed wrong, finally starting to mend right. There were nights I cried in bed after our first clumsy tries at being close. Charlie never pushed, never got frustrated, just held me as I sobbed, letting out pain I didn't even know I was still carrying. When I finally let myself be with him fully, months later, it was like meeting my body for the first time. Not a place of hurt and shame, but one of joy, connection, peace. We dated for 2 years before tying the knot in a simple courthouse ceremony, followed by lunch at his mum's place with a handful of friends and family. No white gown, no big party, just a light blue dress I paid off in instalments, a surprise bouquet of daisies from Charlie, and a thin silver ring that felt like a promise. We moved into a tiny 2-room apartment in Queens, close to his mum's. It was ours, free of ghosts, a place to build new memories that could slowly overwrite the old ones. Around then, I started studying again. Night classes twice a week after my shifts at Mrs. Eleanor's. Charlie was my biggest cheerleader, quizzing me on lessons, celebrating every quiz I aced like it was a Nobel Prize. "You're meant for more than cleaning houses," he'd say when I doubted myself. "You'll go to college one day, be a professional, help people who've been through what you have." I thought he was dreaming too big, a half-literate country girl like me. But his belief was so steady, it started rubbing off. I threw myself into studying, every spare minute spent with books and notes. 3 years later, I graduated top of my remedial class. My teacher pulled me aside at the ceremony. "You've got something special, Mary," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Keep going." Her words, echoing Charlie's, finally took root. The next week, I found a nursing program with scholarships. "It's perfect," Charlie said, eyes lighting up. "You've known so much pain, you can help others avoid it." There was something poetic in that, a kind of redemption. I, who'd suffered so much, could learn to ease others' suffering. I studied like my life depended on it, prepping for the entrance exam after work, on weekends, even while washing dishes with Charlie quizzing me. When the results came, I couldn't believe it. I'd placed 3rd. The programme was 2 years of morning classes and afternoon internships. Quitting Mrs. Eleanor's meant tightening our already thin budget. Charlie picked up extra shifts at the pharmacy. I took on late-night sewing gigs. Those were lean years, full of sacrifice, but I never looked back. In nursing school, caring for patients with stories as heavy as mine, I started to understand that bathroom in Vermont. It wasn't just about fighting back, it was about survival, doing what I had to do to keep breathing. Psychology classes taught me about trauma, how the mind copes with the unthinkable. I saw my past not just as a string of horrors, but as a fight I'd won against all odds. The weight of my secret got lighter, not because I forgot the machete or the bodies in the yard, but because I started forgiving the 16-year-old girl who had no other choice. I never told Charlie, never told anyone after Mum, not out of fear, but because some scars are yours alone, proof of battles you fought solo. Charlie could tell when I'd drift off, triggered by a news story, a case at my internship, or the smell of wet earth after rain. He'd just hold my hand. No questions, letting me have my silence. It's one of the million reasons I loved him more every day. When I graduated as a nurse technician at 22, I felt like I'd found my calling. Working at the hospital where I'd trained, mostly with women and kids, I turned my pain into compassion. I could spot abuse a mile away, the way a woman flinched when her husband walked in, the fear in a kid's eyes at the mention of a father or uncle. I'd seen that look in my own reflection too many times. In the 70s, abuse was still brushed off as family business. But I didn't stay quiet. I'd slip women resources, offer a kind word or just a look that said, "I see you. I get it. You're not alone." Every woman I helped, every kid I protected, felt like saving a piece of the girl I used to be. Ever carry a what if that won't let go? A choice you made that saved you but cost something dear? Drop a comment with your story and where you're watching from. Knowing I'm not alone keeps this old heart going. My real plan wasn't just that Sunday in Vermont with a machete under a bucket. It was this: surviving, rebuilding, turning pain into purpose. My scars weren't just reminders of what broke me. They were maps guiding others out of their own darkness. Against all odds, that plan was working. Each day I stepped further from that wooden house, that bathroom, those ghosts, not by forgetting, but by growing, like a tree rooted in rocky soil, stretching for sunlight. By 1975, I was a nurse, married to a good man, living in a home we'd made ours. But that shadow of my past never fully left, just got smaller depending on the light. At the hospital, I worked mostly with women and kids, not by design at first, but it's where I felt I could do the most good. I had a knack for spotting what others missed: a wife shrinking from her husband's voice, a kid tensing at a sudden touch. "How do you see it, doctor?" Robert, the head of paediatrics, asked me once, after I flagged abuse in a girl everyone else called shy. "I know the look," I said simply. "I've seen it in the mirror." He didn't press, just started calling me in for similar cases. Soon, I was the go-to person at the hospital for spotting abuse, in a time when it was still swept under the rug, with no laws or systems to protect victims like there are now, flawed as they still are. In a world that turned a blind eye to bruises and broken spirits, I did what I could with what I had. I'd pull women aside in quiet hospital corners, whispering about new shelters popping up in New York, sometimes keeping a patient admitted longer than needed just to give her a few days of peace while we figured out an escape plan. It wasn't much, but for some, it was the difference between life and death. For many, it was the first time anyone looked them in the eye and said, "I believe you." One patient hit me like a mirror to my past. We called her Jane in the records to protect her, a 15-year-old brought in with injuries her dad and brother swore came from a fall down the stairs. But the patchwork of old and new bruises told the real story. When I finally got her alone, I saw that familiar terror in her eyes, the kind I'd seen in my own reflection. The certainty that no one would listen, that nothing would change, that the only way out was death, hers or theirs. "I know what's happening," I said, holding her hand gently to avoid her bruises. "And you need to know you have a choice. There's a way out." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. A choice, an escape. To her, those were fairy tales. Over the next days, while tending her wounds, I worked on the deeper ones, the kind no bandage could fix. I shared stories of women who'd broken free, rebuilt their lives, never mentioning my own, but letting my convictions say what my words didn't. You can start over. Friends, ever seen someone find a spark of hope after years in the dark? It's like watching a wilted flower perk up with a little water and light. If this story's hitting you, drop a comment with where you're watching from. Knowing I'm not alone in sharing these heavy memories gives me strength. Jane stayed in the hospital nearly 2 months, far longer than her injuries required. Dr. Robert, picking up on the situation, fudged paperwork, citing complications to buy her time. We used those weeks to plan her escape, a women's shelter upstate, new documents, a fresh start far from her abusers. The night before she left, we sat in the hospital's tiny garden, the city lights drowning out the stars. "How do I know I'm doing the right thing?" she asked, her voice shaky but edged with something new, resolve. "You won't," I said honestly, "not for a while, but staying where you were, that wasn't an option." Any step away is a step toward freedom. The next day, I took her to the bus station myself. No social worker could go, since her case was never officially reported, as was common back then. I was just a nurse technician, risking my job to make sure she got to that shelter. As we waited, she gripped my hand. "Will it be okay?" she asked, hope and fear battling in her eyes. "It will," I said, faking more confidence than I felt. "It'll take time, it'll hurt, and some days you'll want to turn back. But one day you'll wake up and realize you're free. You survived, you won." When her bus pulled away, I stood on the platform, something shifting inside me. A door I kept locked for years, hiding my darkest secret, cracked open, letting in a sliver of light. That night I came home changed. Charlie noticed right away as I stirred dinner, quieter than usual. "Something happen?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, not elaborating. "Something good, something big." He didn't push. One of the many reasons I loved him. He knew how to let my silences breathe. After that night, I realized helping one Jane wasn't enough. I needed to do more, reach more people, change a system that lets so many stay trapped. At 25, with just a remedial course and nursing training, college seemed like a pipe dream. But Charlie, as always, had my back. "If anyone can do it, it's you," he'd say on nights when I was drowning in textbooks after a long shift. I took the NYU psychology entrance exam, hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the pencil. Around me were kids fresh out of high school, prepped their whole lives for this. Me, a poor country girl with a spotty education and a past no one could guess. When the results came, Charlie checked the list 3 times before believing it. "You did it, Mary." It was 1973, and I started college at 27, the oldest in my class, the only one married, the only one juggling a full-time job. My classmates were daughters of doctors and lawyers, girls who'd never scrubbed a stranger's floor. I felt out of place at first, like I didn't belong in those lecture halls. But my life, my pain, my survival gave me an edge. While they memorized theories on trauma and resilience, I was naming things I'd lived through. I kept my hospital job, moving from nursing to the new hospital psychology department, helping shape protocols in a field just taking root. It was grueling, but in 1978, at 32, I graduated. At the ceremony, I spotted Charlie in the front row, clapping like he'd burst with pride. In my mind's eye, I saw Mum's face, her serene smile from her final moments. "You did what I never could," she'd said. "Be free." And I was. Free from fear, from shame, from the crushing weight of my secret. Not because I forgot that bathroom or the bodies in the yard, I never would, but because I'd turned that pain into purpose, a light to guide others out of the dark. As a clinical psychologist specialising in trauma and violence, I stayed at the hospital but also opened a small office, seeing mostly women and kids who'd been through hell. In the early 80s, as the country started waking up to domestic violence and women's rights gained traction, I found my voice. I spoke at schools, community centres, churches, about abuse, how to spot it, where to find help. At first, people squirmed. No one wanted to hear about private matters. But slowly, things shifted. In 1982, I teamed up with other psychologists, social workers and lawyers to found our area's first domestic violence shelter, a safe haven for women and kids to rebuild. We fought for funding, dodged threats from angry husbands, moved locations for safety. But we never quit. Charlie was there every step, even when my work kept us apart, even when I got threatening calls from men whose wives I'd helped escape. "What you're doing is too important," he'd say when I felt guilty for being gone so much. "You're saving lives." Charlie never once asked me to slow down, even when my work consumed me. We couldn't have kids. Tuberculosis left scars that made pregnancy impossible. At first that broke my heart, but over time I saw it might have been the universe's way of steering me. The dozens of kids I helped at the shelter, the ones I watched grow and heal from their own traumas, became my family in a way, my daughters and sons, in spirit if not in blood. Real freedom, I learned, didn't come that night I buried those bodies in the Vermont dirt. That was just the first step, desperate and raw. True freedom came slowly, with every woman I helped escape her own hell, every child I saw smile again after so much pain. It came when I realized my story, as brutal as it was, didn't own me. It was a tool, not a chain, a way to build a better future, not just for me, but for others. The best revenge against those who tried to break me wasn't what I did to them. It was living fully, loving deeply, and helping others do the same. I never saw Jane again after that bus station goodbye. But years later, a young mum came to our shelter, fleeing a violent husband. As she told her story, holding her toddler close, she mentioned a nurse who'd helped her escape her father and brother long ago, who gave her the courage to believe she deserved better. She said one day I'd wake up and realize I was free, that I survived, that I won, she said. And she was right. That's why I'm here now, starting over again. That moment hit me hard. Freedom isn't a one-time deal. It's a process, a fight you take on again and again, each time growing stronger, wiser, freer, that scared girl from the bathroom. She'd finally found peace, not by forgetting or denying, but by transforming her pain into something bigger. That chapter, painful, yes, stopped being my whole story. It became just one part of a bigger tale of resilience, purpose, and liberation. The real victory over those who tried to destroy me, not letting them define who I am or who I could become. The 80s brought change to America and to me. The country started waking up to domestic violence, and our shelter became a lifeline, helping dozens of women and kids each year. In 1985, I got a call to join a national coalition against domestic violence task force in Washington, working on policies to tackle violence against women. Me, who'd started helping one woman at a time in a hospital ward, was now part of talks that could change thousands of lives. Charlie drove me to the airport for those trips, his proud smile never fading. "My wife, the doctor," he'd tease, lugging my suitcase. "Who'd have thought that shy girl from the park would change America?" He was exaggerating. I was just one voice among many, working toward a world where homes weren't battlegrounds, but every win, a new law, a trained police department, a protection program, felt like a miracle. Friends, ever poured your heart into something and seen it finally take root? It's like watching a tree you've watered through drought finally bear fruit. If this story's moved you, drop a heart in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. It means the world. In the 90s, I stretched further. Beyond the hospital, shelter and clinic, I started training cops, social workers, nurses and teachers, passing on what I'd learned the hard way. Then came a game changer. NYU invited me to consult for their new centre on violence against women and children. I hesitated. Me, with no master's or PhD, just a psychology degree and years in the trenches. "They want you for your experience," Charlie said. "You've lived what they only read about." He was right. My scars gave me a voice that resonated in lecture halls and research labs, helping shape care protocols used nationwide. In 2003, at 57, I published Breaking the Silence, a practical guide for identifying and addressing domestic violence. No jargon, just a straightforward manual for teachers, nurses, anyone who might be a lifeline for someone in danger. To my shock, it took off, used in trainings, translated into Spanish, shared across Latin America. I got invites to speak in Paris, consult globally, join human rights forums. Charlie, retired by then, came along. "Never thought I'd see Paris," he said, holding my hand as we strolled through the city. From a Vermont farm to international stages, the girl who once dreamed of reading to escape was now sharing her story to change lives. Looking back, from that wooden house to university auditoriums, I hardly recognized the scared kid I was. It wasn't a quick change, it was a slow, sometimes painful rebuild. Learning to trust, to love, to believe I deserved good things, turning anger into action, fear into protection, pain into compassion. Charlie was my rock through it all. Our 50-year marriage was a true partnership. He didn't try to save me. He knew I had to do that myself, but he was always there, holding my hand through the dark. I never told him about the bathroom or the bodies, not because I feared his judgment, he'd never judge me, but because some burdens are mine alone. He sensed the shadow, I think, but he let it be. What matters isn't what happened to you, he'd say, it's what you did with it. And what I did was turn trauma into purpose, pain into hope for others still trapped. Helping wasn't just about them. It healed me too at first. Over time it grew bigger, a mission beyond my own wounds. Losing Charlie in 2015 to a sudden stroke one Sunday morning over coffee on our balcony was like losing half my heart. But the same strength that got me through that bathroom, through TB, through everything, carried me forward. I kept working, the centre, the shelter, the talks, until it was time to pass the torch. At 70 in 2017, I retired. My colleagues threw a surprise party packed with hundreds, co-workers, former students, women and kids from the shelter, now grown. Seeing their faces, hearing their thanks, I finally understood Mum's words. Live for both of us. I hadn't just survived. I'd lived for her, for me, for every woman who didn't get out in time. After retiring, I shocked my New York friends by moving back to Maplewood, Vermont. Not to the farm, long gone, but to the town, now modernised. I bought a cosy house near the square and opened a craft shop, more a gathering spot than a business, filled with quilts and embroidery from local women, many of whom I'd helped through a community project. They call me Grandma Mary from the square now, the white-haired lady who listens, tells stories, and offers comfort without judgment. Few know about the books, the lectures, the work that took me worldwide. Fewer still know about that bathroom, those bodies buried in a yard that's probably just a memory. Sometimes, at night, staring at the stars, I think about that day, not with guilt, that's long gone, but with quiet acceptance. I did what I had to do to survive. Then I used that survival to make sure others didn't have to make the same choice. Life has a funny way of turning curses into blessings, wounds into healing. If my story leaves you with anything, let it be this. The past shapes you, but it doesn't own you. You can choose what to do with your scars. Let them trap you or use them to lift others up. It's a hard road, but it's yours to walk. At 78, I look back with awe and gratitude, awe for the girl who beat the odds, gratitude for the life I built from the ashes. Every day is a victory over those who tried to break me, every smile, a rebellion, every moment of peace, proof they didn't win. I did. I didn't just survive, I thrived, and I helped others do the same. So, friends, hit that like button, subscribe to the Grandparents' Tales channel, and tell me where you're watching from. Every story shared is a hand reaching out to someone feeling as alone as I did in that bathroom long ago. Life's not easy, but if we share the load, turn pain into purpose, that's where the real magic happens. I'm Grandma Mary from the Square, and this